welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, series, and more.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we are so excited to cover chapters 35 through 41 of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. As always, let's start with our content warnings. While we're focusing today's discussion on this stretch of chapters and ACOWAR, these episodes do include spoilers for the entire ACOTAR series. These deep dives do not, however, have spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of every episode where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big spoiler warning ahead of time so you can leave the episode if you haven't read the rest of the Maasverse, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and Crescent City callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why Amryn is wearing a fine piece of jewelry that looks mighty familiar, then please go finish the books. We will be here when you're done.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
Tent sex! That's all. Be mindful of little listening ears.
Yeah. We're at that point, everybody. Additionally, we are so excited for our upcoming live events.
We truly cannot wait for our Fantasy Fangirls live show at Comedy Works South in Denver, Colorado on October 20th. VIP tickets sold out literally less than 48 hours. And then we opened up 10 more tickets just for people of our Patreon, and those sold out within 90 freaking minutes for VIP tickets. So we're unbelievably excited. There are still general admission tickets available. If you are thinking about being there for our first standalone live show, get your tickets soon.
Later this week, I can't believe it's finally time, we will see you at the Dragon Gauntlet in Boyne City, Michigan. We will also be influencer partners at the Swords and Shadows Masquerade by Mountains and Magic in Highlands Ranch, Colorado on November 23rd.
You can also dance the night away with us at the Fantastique Collections New Year's Eve drop party in Denver, Colorado. All the links and more information to get tickets to these events are in our show notes.
If you love Fantasy Fangirls and have been loving this ACOTAR series journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, discount codes on tickets, and just more all around, please check out our Patreon.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join. The Valkyries, which includes access to our boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, and a book club, promo codes for live events, plus a 20% off discounted and exclusive merch store. That is all for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That's for $10 a month. And then last but not least, we have our newest and highly requested tier, the Inner Circle, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus lots more behind-the-scenes content from Lexi and I, a welcome gift, giveaways, a private Discord channel, and your name shouted out on the podcast. That is for $25 a month.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also, of course, in the show notes. And really and truly, friends, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this independent podcast into our livelihood. It is all because of you, and we just appreciate you so much.
And now it is time to defend Adriata!
Yes. All right, let's do this. As always, Nicole is going to start this episode by summarizing what happens in ACOWAR chapters 35 through 41. So gather around, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 35, the Summer Court calls for aid. Well, really, Varian does. Our inner circle, minus the tiny ancient one, all travel to the absolutely chaotic bloodbath that is Adriata. But something seems off about the 2 High Lords' power. Oh no, it's dampered. And yes, the 2 High Lords, because no one else bothered to show up to the party. However, they probably weren't invited. But still, Moore gives Feyre a rundown. They are to go into the palace and save the innocents, but Feyre, behave and don't be a hero or stupid, sometimes both. Chapter 36, in the palace, it's murder, death, destruction, oh my! Mainly because our 2 gals are badasses and kill basically every Highburn soldier in sight, except the ones that they let the servants tear apart limb from limb. Yummy. But with the palace levels cleared out, nice job, team. This murderous duo heads out into the streets of Adriata to continue aiding the innocents. However, it is time to check in with the hubby using Daemati Find My Friends. And oh dear, he is staring right at the King of Hybern, chapter 37. Mother above, this is bad. The King of Hybern and Reese have a verbal dance off, and I'm not gonna lie, our master chess player Reese gets his ass handed to him. But after begging her mate to end the bastard, the King of Hybern has one more dance move up his sleeve. He gets on deck and does the worm, and the crowd goes wild. Not really. It turns out that he is an illusion and not really here at all. Egg on your face, Resand. But
we've all been there, buddy.
But at least you get to miss all the Hybern soldiers, right? Chapter 38. Fae-vorite, back in her own body, is being slapped awake by a stressed out Moore. Pull yourself together, Fae-vorite. And Fae-vorite gives Moore the lowdown just as she sees Reese and Tarquin, who now have access to all of their power, run the Hybern soldiers out of town. Goodbye! Back in the Hybern Free Palace, it's time to go to, yep, you guessed it, the dining room, where Fae-vorite meets up with an irate Tarquin, who thinks the Night Court was here to help Hybern and finish the job they started last book. I mean, his points, while incorrect, are valid. Reese joins his dining room meeting as his High Lord of the Night Court mask and only proceeds to further anger the Murma High Lord. And after asking him to come to this High Lord's meeting that's happening in a week, Tarquin throws him out. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 39. In the hills of Adriata, it's all hands on deck helping the injured Illyrians. And after running around helping the soldiers, Fae-vorite sits down for just a moment, one teeny tiny second, and falls asleep in the mud. Waking up in their tent, her and Reese have a quick convo. Hey, honey, how was your first official day of war? How are you feeling? Validly, not good. So it's time to make shit happen. Agreeing to move the High Lord's meeting up, Fae-vorite encourages Reese to also take off the masks and break free of the Amaranth the curse. Sorry, wrong book. Take off the mask and show them the truest version of the Court of Dreams. Reese agrees, and Fae-vorite, wanting to show her appreciation, kisses down his body and oral bang, orally bang. I said it. This is awkward. People are dying outside. Bang. Back in Valaris.
Oh man, we're at the point in the book where we gotta talk about it. Buckle up.
This podcast is rated R. Back in Valaris, an awaiting Nesta asks where Cassian is. I wonder why that is. But don't worry, he'll be back soon, Nesta darling. Until then, Fae-vorite is not done taking taking matters into her own hands. Chapter 40. Time for another prison trip. With Reese lingering in the hall, Fae-vorite approaches the bone carver, telling him to pick another object than the Ouroboros mirror. But no. Mirror on the wall. Who's the most persistent of them all? So, cutting their losses, our High Lord and Lady leave. Not without Fae-vorite finally showing Reese the image of their son, who is viciously yelling in his prison cell about receiving a chicken bone in exchange for his services. Back in Valaris, again, they head into the kitchen and see Elaine, who is covered in flour, like the baking kind, not the soil kind, and smiling. Go Elaine! Chapter 41. A spot has been decided. The High Lords have submitted their RSVPs, except Tamlin, and it's time to go to the meeting. Everyone looking like a snack in their outfits, specifically Fae-vorite, who is wearing her starlight dress and donning a new crown that her and Reese took a midnight stroll to the family jewels cave to go and get. So, without further ado, it's time to winnow away. But what's that? It's Nesta Archeron standing at the top of the steps. She is going with them. Everyone is dressed in their absolute finest, but I know that my favorite outfits are always my summer clothes. However, there is no greater threat to my hot girl summer than summertime swamp ass. Thankfully, MeUndies has got us covered during the warmer months with lightweight, anti-odor, and quick-drying Breathe fabrics. MeUndies has so many different styles of Breathe underwear, and they're all incredibly cool and comfortable. Cool, literally like cool, like breezy, and cool, like cool. You got it. From high-waisted or hipster during that time of the month to cheeky brief or bikini when I'm feeling myself, MeUndies has a cut for every butt this summer.
I love MeUndies. You know it's good underwear when it's the very first pair that you grab from the drawer, and when you run out, it's automatically laundry time. You know the underwear I'm talking about. MeUndies is that underwear. They're extra comfy and breathable, especially in this heat, no matter whether I'm wearing leggings, jean shorts, or a dress.
MeUndies has over 10 different styles, ranging from cute boy shorts to thongs to lace options that are actually comfortable. You know what I mean. These cuts come in over 100 different colors, colors and prints, ranging from black to your zodiac sign to my favorite narwhal pair of underwear. I will never forget them. They're amazing. And my favorite part of MeUndies is that they use sustainably sourced materials and work with partners that actually care for their workers. We love that.
Plus, if you're not happy with your first pair of undies, it's on MeUndies. Summer is here. Get every cut for your butt from MeUndies. Get 20% off your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/FFG. That's MeUndies.com/FFG for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in. All right, it is time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, foreshadowing theories, and so much more. Picking up right where we left off last episode, Amren receives word from Varian that Hybern is attacking Adriata in the summer court. And once again, our crew is caught completely unaware.
This could have been the title of the book, A Court of Hybern Surprises.
The thing is, it would have been a continuation because it was also last book too. I'm going to be talking about this. We will later learn that Varian acted of his own accord. Tarquin will not have known his cousin warned Amren about the attack. In fact, when the Night Court comes to help, Tarquin will initially believe they are Hybern allies and arriving to finish off the Summer Court city. Considering Tarquin's current opinions about the High Lord of the Night Court and his deception, plus Feyre's main role in destabilizing the Spring Court that allowed Hybern to take over, I'm not surprised that this will be Tarquin's assumption. But before we get to all of that, let's get back to this moment. Why does the Night Court choose to rush to their aid? Because, Tarquin declared Rhys, Feyre, and Amren mortal enemies of the Summer Court, and he wants them dead. Remember those blood rubies? So why would our crew help them? Not only do they help them, but they jump into action without a second thought. So for one, all of Tarquin's armies aren't ready for battle. So the Inner Circle knows that Adriata is outmatched against Hybern, partly because his terrestrial, aka land, army moved to the Spring Court borders because Feyre imploded it and made it right for Hybern. So the Summer Court expected an attack or danger from that border instead of from the Western Sea. And this terrestrial legion can't get to Adriata in time because it's too far away. It's about 3 days march. Tarquin will blame Feyre for this attack and she will feel the guilt, but Rhys will counter that they are not responsible for Hybern's actions. Number 2, despite the price on their heads from the Summer Court, Rhys and Feyre genuinely liked Tarquin and appreciated their budding friendship. It hurt Rhys when Tarquin sent those blood rubies because he felt like the other High Lord saw past his mask and kind of understood who Rhys really was. They have the same goals, they're both dreamers, and Rhys really does respect Tarquin. Which brings me to reason number 3. Helping them is just the right thing to do. As Feyre will later point out to Nesta when she observes that they went into battle to help without a second thought, our High Lord and Lady of the Night Court may be morally gray, but at the end of the day, they always fight for the innocent. They stand up for what is right and good in this world no matter what. They will always fight against Hybern and protect an innocent city.
And I'll also throw in, and I don't think this is actively what they're thinking or even consciously what they're thinking, that they're about to go into a meeting with all the other High Lords and they need to look good. They need to look like people who you'd want to ally with.
Exactly.
And I don't think that's in any way what they were thinking when they were going to Adriata, because like you said, it's just the right thing to do. They are in the let's protect the innocent, let's be selfless in this moment. It does help the meeting that happens 3 days from now.
So all in all, this decision to take the Illyrian legions and head to Adriata, it's a no-brainer. And also the Darkbringers, which is, of course, the Court of Nightmares Legion, they are not quite ready. So this one battle is just the Illyrians, and then the Darkbringers will come for the second battle.
So our crew begins to winnow to Adriata. However, notably, not everyone in the Inner Circle except Amren, who will remain here in Valaris watching over Nesta and Elaine. I'm getting on my high horse for a second, because why on earth are we not bringing the scariest and the deadliest of them all to a battle? I know they need to leave someone who can protect the city. And honestly, this easily could be a distraction from Hybern so that he swoops in and takes Valaris or whatever and sacks it. I get that. But could literally anyone else do this? Feyre is a great example of someone who could stay in Valaris because she has the mind-to-mind connection with Rhys. She can ring the Daemati alarm and be like, hey, oh dear.
Rhys can do that with all of them.
Rhys can, but Amren cannot speak into Rhys's mind. So Amren would not be able to pick up the phone and call Rhys, but Rhys would be able to pick up the phone and call her, right? But Feyre, who would be in Valaris, would be able to pick up the phone and call Rhys and be like, hey, danger, danger, danger. And he and the others would be able to come to Valaris and help.
Usually I would agree with you. It's like become a running joke where it's like, why do they not take the tiny ancient one to more of these battles? Because she would be really useful. They have so far really underestimated Hybern. And Varian's message did say to prepare their own defenses, which is kind of vague. Is he saying to prepare their own defenses to come to Adriata's aid, which is kind of how they interpret that message, or prepare their own defenses for a separate Hybern attack on the Night Court shores? So they could be concerned that Hybern will also attack them again, like you were just saying. Even though he did just waste that one spell that could break through Valaris' wards, and he was unsuccessful in getting Nessa. So with that logic, actually, Valaris should be safer than ever now because they reinstated those wards, and the king, his way of breaking through the initial wards, he doesn't have that anymore. But I will say also, they thought that last time, and they have been fooled now twice by Hybern. And also, I don't see the team leaving Hybern to go take care of their own city and leave Adriata to their own. So that is why Amren would be able to hold off an attack for as long as they would need to, while Feyre would definitely be shit out of luck. Like, don't get me wrong, she can do some cool stuff, but she can only take on so many soldiers at the one point. When Feyre and Mor arrive in Adriata at the top of a hill overlooking the Summer Court city, they realize just how overrun it is with Hybern. The bay is red with blood. People are screaming, soldiers are shouting, buildings and ships are burning, and Mor observes that no other courts have come to help. First of all, this exemplifies the Night Court's values that I listed a few minutes ago about why they are coming to their aid. They protect the innocent at all costs and never hesitate to help those in need. At the same time, I have to wonder if any other court received a warning like Amren did. My guess is no. Varian specifically sent her a message because they're friends, and Azriel did not hear of this oncoming attack from his spies. Again, this was a complete surprise, as is a theme in these books. Just gonna say. So even with that aside, would other courts quickly hear about this battle and have the opportunity to winnow aid as well? Maybe a few of them. Let's walk through them. Autumn Court would be the closest, but Baron obviously would not help a neighbor. Like, scratch him off the list. Spring Court is definitely off the table. Scratch them off the list. Winter Court is the other closest to the Summer Court border. Would Kallias come to help? Maybe, but he's also focused on protecting his own in the aftermath of Amarantha. I'll say he's a little extra traumatized than the other ones.
Well, he's really hesitant to ever come to aid. I think that Kallias wouldn't jump for it. I don't know if it's like he wouldn't want to, but he wouldn't jump at it, whereas Vivian would make him. I think she would.
Vivian would absolutely make him. Yes, exactly. I believe that Dawn and Day very well might. And of course, when we're talking about distance here, distance is somewhat irrelevant when there is winnowing magic, as the Night Court proves. But they may have also heard about the attack, I'll just say too late. You know that it goes through the grapevine really quickly, but they may have reached them just too late, or they might have hesitated too. I could definitely see them debating versus the Night Court, who really just jumps in, stops all their other plans, is like, go, go, go. While everybody else would be like, well, let's weigh the pros and cons, We got to remember, the Night Court is spearheading this war against Hybern. They will always be the first to fight against Hybern. It's them who are desperately trying to get the other courts on their side, like Nicole was saying there. And yeah, that does include all of the courts I just listed, even the ones that are considered more good and more allies.
So Feyre, this might be her first battle in a official war, but she is no stranger to this type of bloodshed. Hunting is different because it's quiet, it's sneaky, it's calculated, it's patient, but it is still bloody.
It's also very purposeful. It is to feed themselves. It is for their own survival. Yes.
Definitely. Whereas Under the Mountain, that bloodshed, she was totally solo. And that was think on your feet, use your resources. It was you against the world. The surprise attack on Valaris was pick a foe, any foe, and go after them until they're dead. This city attack, she thought it would be the neat lines, but instead it's chaos everywhere. And quite frankly, this is the type of bloodshed where she has the most amount of confidence in her battle moves.
Feyre does her best fighting when the primary goal is to protect the innocent here in the city. How many times have I already said protect the innocent in this episode? It's okay. We really got to drive the point home here. That was the case for the surprise attack on Valaris, and that's the case here in Adriata too, where she is actively seeking out the enemy who are preying on citizens, which is different than the later battle that she will witness, where it is much more, I'll say, Battle of the Bastard style. You don't know up from down. You can hardly distinguish who's an enemy and who's not. As chaotic as this city attack is, it has a sense of, even she says this isn't the right word, but it's the best way to describe it, a sense of ease for her because she can be clear-headed and focused on her precise goal to save the innocent. But I do think that she is taken aback by this kind of chaos because Hybern is not only overwhelming the city, but there are a lot of soldiers fighting back too that inevitably add to the death toll, adds to the destruction and chaos. This is different than the Valaris attack because that was of course terrible and destructive, yes, but it was essentially the Inner Circle versus the Outer Legions with high Fae foot soldiers. Feyre points out she had not expected there to be this many soldiers on either side, which is what makes it feel so chaotic here. So to kind of think about like a spectrum of the sorts of battles that she witnesses or experiences, on one end, I'll say that we have the surprise attack on Valaris, which is really literally a surprise attack on them where there were very few people who were able to defend back. They did it because they're all very powerful. And then we have on the other end of the spectrum, which is more, again, that Battle of the Bastard style, where it is much more of a traditional battlefield with the lines and the chaos, and you are really relying on the person right next to you. There are no innocents involved in that. And then this attack here is right there in the middle, where yes, there are soldiers on both sides. The Illyrians will still be in their lines and whatnot, but there is also that element of protecting the innocent in the city. So I don't know, Nicole and I have been like really hung up on this whole concept of like the different kinds of battles and how she describes the chaos. But anyway, I think we described it pretty well.
Well, I'm not done. So before we enter the palace with Feyre and more, there's a few things that I do want to point out about the battle raging on the land and seas. The first is that Tarquin's ships are fighting back against the oncoming Hybern fleet. Prior to being High Lord, Tarquin was the leader of the Summer Court Naval Legion, so he's really just back in his element, and I mean that quite literally, the water. Quote, utterly outnumbered, yet plumes of magic, water and wind and whips of vines kept attacking any boat that neared. I love that writing. It's so beautiful.
So something to point out is that Tarquin's magic does have a damper on it like Rhys's right now. So my guess is if this water and wind is specifically his power, but I do think that there are others who are contributing to it as well. It's the maximum that he can do right now to attack these Hybern ships right now. It's kind of like he's only able to hold them off versus destroy them.
Exactly, yes. Another thing I want to point out is that Rhys has winnowed all the Illyrian soldiers in, which we don't get an exact number, but we'll go over a ballpark later, which, wow, yeah, he's not only super drained of his magic, but he also has a damper on his power. It makes me think about his mom wanting him to train as an Illyrian in addition to having his magic, because it's for moments like this where his magic is not available for him to fall back on, and he only can rely on Illyrian. Smart mama! And then there's mention of these Illyrian lines pushing against the fleet. We're going to hear the phrase lines not only a lot today, but in terms of battle, just a lot in this book. So I thought that I would do some research for us to look it up and make sure that we're all on the same battle page. Battle lines or formation lines are quite literally a line, I know, shocking, right? Of soldiers all fighting on the same side who are lined up to face an enemy. While it can just be about one line deep, it can ideally be about 3 lines deep. Also, please keep in mind, I am not a medieval battle expert. I know they exist out there. Please don't come for me in the comments. I'm doing my best. This is used for multiple reasons. Number one, it allows for maximum firepower since all of their power is going one direction against an enemy. Second, it's easiest to maneuver soldiers in a rigid formation versus if they're all spread out like, ants, whatever. It is also easier to distribute orders. Number 3, it is way easier to know who's on your side because literally you look to your right, you look to your left. Those are the people on your side versus if you're chaotically spread out. And number 4, similarly, it allows for maximum visibility because you only need to look forward in one direction rather than all your different sides, again, if you were spread out. So learning this, I was like, oh, that actually makes quite a lot of sense. The last thing I want to point out before we move into the palace is that Feyre remembers that Lisa from marketing, aka Alice, left the spring court for summer and worries that she and her nephews are in the battle somewhere and wonders if they're safe. We never see them during this fight, and I don't think we get confirmation that they're alive. Cool.
We never hear about Alice ever again. I'm just pointing out facts. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm not saying anything good. I'm just saying that we never hear anything about them.
I feel like if she would have died, we would have found out as readers for like emotional impact.
I do agree as well. And we also don't know that she's in Adriata. We know that she has a cousin here, but that doesn't mean that this is where she will be going.
That is true. I'm just going to pretend that she's fine and well and living her
Me too.
Living her best life. Feyre and Mor get into the palace, but Mor has a few rules for Feyre, darling.
The two of them have to stick close. Feyre is not allowed out of Mor's sight. They also don't go down a hall or stairwell without assessing it first.
And they're not allowed to stop or linger or help the wounded in the palace. Instead, they must press on and leave the wounded to their healers. I gotta admit, Mor knows her high lady. Like, she knows exactly what to tell her here. Because Feyre, 1 year ago, I'd even argue less than 1 year ago, she would have stopped and helped instantly. I mean, she will actually literally even do that later with Briar in a Hybern camp. So I don't even know if that's 1 year ago. This is just present Feyre. But right now, Mor is the more experienced warrior, and Feyre knows it. It is a reminder that everyone has their role in battle, and Feyre does not need to be every role. What an overachiever. She needs to be the fighter, not the savior right now.
I would also feel so much extra pressure if I was Mor in this moment. She is basically responsible for her High Lady of the Night Court and her cousin's mate as the two of them head into battle. And Feyre is young and inexperienced. Yes, she could absolutely hold her own. We all know that. But Mor is having to give her a crash course as they head into this battle. Cassian has taught Feyre a lot about fighting and strategy, but the battle is here. And there are some extra tips that Mor needs to relay right here, right now, to keep them both alive, especially as the two of them go up against a ship's worth 50 Hybern soldiers.
And Feyre has mostly no problem being just the fighter right now. Feyre knows when to save the innocent, when to kill the guilty, and how to tell the difference in a pinch. But she still has a little human part of her that hesitates to just outright kill, or at least for her first few kills. It's almost like warming up your body before you do a dance routine. She's warming up her body and her instincts, and these first two kills are the hardest for her to do. Her magic, however, has no problem following through without hesitation, tearing them from the inside out with a wall of fire that makes its way down their throats, and it literally burns them from the inside out.
What a way to die. Like, jeez. No shade, because they are bad people, but wow. Ouchie. And then she'll also kill a soldier by drowning him where he stands. Again, if I had to choose one way or the other, I think I would choose the drowning version.
Absolutely drowning.
Yeah. And then she uses darkness to blind others as they winnow kill. I love those every time that happens. Anyway, I have to say, I'm more and more regretting what I said at the beginning of this ACOWAR book at the top of episode 1, when I shared how I don't really feel like Feyre uses her magic to her full potential.
Yeah, I had that same thought when I was reading this. Yeah. I was like, oh, did I read this
I think we're so focused on just the final battle that we completely forgot about all this other stuff. And so far in this book, she is just killing it. Literally, but like, she is doing fantastic with using all of the powers that she has available to her. So Feyre, I humbly apologize for what I said about you and not using your avatar skills to the best that you could.
Retweet. Yes, exactly how you said it. Meanwhile, Mor does not use her powers because what is the power of truth here? And we don't even know what that is in general.
Well, does Mor's power have a damper on them as well? Which, again, I'm going to try to walk through some of that because it's a little confusing.
I'm letting you handle that. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But Moore uses just good old-fashioned beheading. Moore jokingly, however, says that she never wants to get on Feyre's bad side. And honestly, same. But
Me too.
The burning from the inside out, that really, oh, God.
She'd probably burn us for saying that she's not using her powers to her full potential.
Poor Reese would just missed us on sight. While Feyre appreciates this attempt at light humor and humanity, lighthearted Feyre is not at home right now. Like, she cannot pick up the phone. Instead, when Feyre enters the palace, she enters this place of pure primal killing. I feel like it's her way of, I'll say, compartmentalizing and just focusing on that one overarching goal so that she doesn't just break down and start shaking right here.
Well, and then I love how in the sequence, the only thing that she's really realizing for herself is the need for water. She repeatedly wishes she had water, which is such a basic need for her to cling to and feel amid all of this killing and death and having to be detached from emotion.
I mean, we talked this to death literally in ACOWAR coverage, but she's back in survival mode, but in a very different manner. It's not survival mode like it was in ACOWAR. This is survival mode on a battlefield, basically. She is shutting off all emotion right now so that she can get from one room to another alive. Quote, I stopped being able to feel a great many things as we killed and killed. What a sentence. And again, a fair sentence, considering that at the end of this battle, she's not able to tell the difference between blood coating her skin, blood in her mouth, skin, eyes. She can't tell the difference between any of that and her own sweat. After the battle, she'll think, quote, I tried to remember the usual fit of my soul in my body, the priority of things, my way of looking at the world. What do I do with my limbs in the stillness? How do I usually position my hands without a blade between them? How do I stop moving? Oh my God. Feyre knows that coming back to, major air quotes, normalcy is a lost hope after this battle. Because while they may be able to win the war and come to peaceful terms and all that kind of stuff, because of this battle, because of the outright killing she is doing in the palace, she mentions that she is forever changed, her soul forever altered, which personally I do have some questions about. This is not her first time killing. And I would understand if it was between, the Under the Mountain Task 3 and this. But I'll
even say if it was only against the Adder as well.
Yes. But we had that moment with Reese last book where it was the Winnow Strike, where she went in and just outright brutally killed people because they had done her wrong. There was also the moment, like you mentioned, with the
I will say real quickly for that one, I think because it was so closely tied to her mate and they kind of had a lot of other stuff going on too, I think that was something that she was able to maybe compartmentalize a little bit better.
So do you think that this is the most quantity? Because it's sounding like this is the most quantity.
I think so. And I think it goes back to it being a true battle versus a attack on her city.
Yeah.
And again, it is very gray lines that we are talking about here. And I do think that this one, it is just so much more amplified. And it's not just, her very closest friends, as well as the innocent citizens, but it is also the Illyrian legions. It's also Tarquin soldiers and stuff like that. So again, it's fine lines, but that's how I interpret it.
I think that's a great way of interpreting. Yes, yes.
One more thing to add is that this is only the beginning of what's to come. And that terrifies her.
Yes, because she knows the last war lasted 7 years. And she's in her head like, can I do this for 7 years? And I don't think I can.
And it's her realizing like, I have to, because the reward, which is, hopefully saving humanity and saving people, is worth losing her soul over. And that's where she's like, oh my gosh, like again, the difference between a battle and an attack, this is a battle. And this is only the first of many battles.
Well, and then there's that line later where she says, quote, and I could understand just for a heartbeat as the wind tore through us, why some rulers, human and fae, had bowed before Hybern, bowed rather than face this. Woof. Yeah.
Yeah. While Feyre and Moore are clearing out the palace and the streets of Hybern's soldiers, Reese is tracking the strange damper on his power and on the siphon's power. Feyre mentally reaches for him and he lets her into his impenetrable shields. So she is looking through his eyes and experiencing what his senses are. She's not like in his memories in the same way that she has been in the past, but she is experiencing what he is experiencing, which means that we are pulled right into Reese's perspective.
And I love how the magic is described as it's like she's lunging into his mind and his shields are sealing her in. This was one of the rules that Rhys mentioned back in ACOWAR to never do with a Daimati, because if you enter a mind of a Daimati, they can seal you in forever. But I guess that mates are the exception to the rule, which makes sense.
I think there's a certain level of trust between them.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Like I said, he's hunting down this damper. It's as if some sort of spell has turned his power oily, making it harder to wield. That's why the battle is lasting as long as it is. Rhys isn't able to unleash his full power and obliterate these Hybern soldiers. The plan had been to arrive and land a clean, precise blow to end this right here and now, but that single shot slipped from his grasp due to the spell. So upon tracking the origin of the spell on a Hybern ship, Rhys comes face to face with the King of Hybern. Oh dear! Immediately, we can gather that the King of Hybern doesn't like to get his hands dirty in battle. Like, is anybody shocked here? He's clean, no weapons on him, no blood, because he says to Rhys, quote, "I was waiting for more interesting quarry to find me."
I feel like this is such a villain trope because Voldemort did the same thing. Like, this is just such an evil
Ramsay
villain.
Bolton,
Ramsay Bolton did the same thing. Like, it's just such an evil villain thing where it's like, I let my
They're cowardly, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Now, again, there is the caveat where in this particular instance, the King of Hybern is not actually there, but
we're going to pretend like that's not a thing.
You know what we mean,
Rhys
yeah.
does not believe it, and we're going to act as if we're Rhys for a moment.
So we learn that this was a trap, another trap, to find out which High Lord would hunt down the source of this damper first. And I'm going to be honest here, folks. I'm a little bit confused by this damper spell. I'm pretty sure Nicole is as well. So I'm going to try to do my absolute best in walking through this. My understanding is that the King of Hybern cast this spell to damper all magic, but it only applies to those in this vicinity. And he wants to see who is worthy enough, powerful enough to track it down. But then there's mention of finding out which High Lord would hunt down the source of the damper. So I guess only High Lords would be powerful enough to do this, to hunt it down. Because we know that it is not only affecting High Lords, because the damper applies to the siphons as well. And we don't get confirmation, but maybe it applies to more too. We know that it doesn't apply to Feyre. She makes no mention of her own powers feeling oily, and while she is in Rhys's mind, it'll be referred to as blanketing Rhys's powers, not hers too. I'm wondering if this is because she's made and therefore different, so the spell doesn't apply to her in the same way that it does with the other Fae. Basically, I'm guessing the King of Hybern assumes another court will come to help Adriata, so he's testing to see who, because only a High Lord would be able to track down the source of this spell, and so he is searching for which High Lord is helping Tarquin here. Because he knows that Tarquin is not going to hunt it down because Tarquin is kind of busy protecting his city. Did anybody just track what I said?
Cauldron boil me. I have nothing to add.
It's okay, me either. Anyway, Rhys knew this hunt was a trap, but he purposefully went on it anyway because that is Rhys. Feyre is begging her mate, mind to mind, to kill the king right here. She says Rhys could end the war right now before it can truly begin. I'm going to argue that it's already begun, but semantics. Rhys counters that the king's followers would turn it against him, essentially saying it wouldn't be best in the long run if he killed him right now. Hybern's mission runs so much deeper than simply following their king. Yes, of course the King of Hybern is leading the charge, but there are centuries of hatred for Fae who support the treaty, as the King of Hybern shares in his evil villain monologue. And Rhys here is arguing that the war will carry on without the King of Hybern.
Which really quickly, it does. When he dies at the end of this book, the soldiers continue fighting because they're so impassioned by his propaganda from Hybern.
Exactly. And in this situation here, Rhys thinks that if the king is killed, then it'll only aid their cause more. While I get his perspective, I am personally with Feyre. Killing the king absolutely wouldn't just end everything, and it would indeed fuel his people more. I do agree with Rhys on that. But, and this is crucial, it would remove their most powerful leader, which would no doubt lead to at least some disorganization. Then the Prythian side could seize on that disarray and gain the upper hand, which they desperately need. We are talking about they need every single second of every single day to do something. And that would give them a tiny bit of time to rally their own troops and go after this disorganized army.
I will also note that the King of Hybern, as far as we know, is the only person who can wield the cauldron.
That's a great point. Yes.
Object in this entire war. That literally in 4 days, the King of Hybern will use said cauldron to destroy the wall. The thing that they're trying to get rid. Yeah, I'm with Feyre.
Continuing on this, Rhys does also counter that he needs to uncover the source of the spell on their power and break it, which I get. Killing the king is not a given that the spell breaks. But I don't know. I think it's worth a try.
I give Rhys a B- for effort.
And again, we know it's technically irrelevant because the king can't be killed right here. But I am with Feyre as she repeats, kill him, kill him. Now, again, we're not at this part yet, but we do recognize that Rhys does try to with his, darkness javelin. But it's just the fact that he hesitates and he's like, no, I don't think that we should quite kill him. And then I guess he does change his mind, but...
I think the King of Hybern pissed him off enough for him to change his mind.
There you go. Yes.
Well, let's talk about it. The King of Hybern knows exactly how to push Rhys's buttons. Rhys, who up until this moment has been pretty polished, pretty, his usual High Lord, calm, cool, and collected self, he begins to internally waver as the King of Hybern brings up Rhys being a source of entertainment for Amarantha. And even though Rhys doesn't let it show on his face, the king knows the anger that washes over him at that moment in the mention of her name. He continues talking about her with saying, quote, "The last report I received from Amarantha, she was still enjoying you." And as he says, this is the biggest fuck you, the King of Hybern slides his hands into his own pockets, which is a mannerism we highly associate with Rhys when he is trying to gain control or when he knows he's in control of a conversation. This is not only that the King of Hybern is taunting Rhys with Amarantha, he's now taunting Rhys with his own maneuver. But this is also writing clue from SJM showing us readers who is really in charge of the conversation right now, even though Rhys externally continues to show no signs. So the King of Hybern's like, let me go a little further and go in with a kill shot that he knows will work, because it's what made Rhys break last book when they were in Hybern. Quote, "Such a remarkable girl, your mate. First Amarantha, then my pet, the adder, and then she broke past all the wards around my palace to aid your escape. Not to mention my niece and nephew." He's not bringing up Feyre's list of accomplishments because he thinks she's super cool. No. This is to show the anger and the rage that the King of Hybern actually has towards Feyre. Now, it's not as great as Nesta, but it's definitely, he's leaning on Feyre right now to really piss Rhys off, implying that because of the havoc Feyre has brought to him, his minions, his, island, he is going to destroy her in return.
And not in a killing way, I'll even say, unfortunately.
Because he's not done. Quote, "Perhaps I'll give her to Tamlin when I'm done."
And no, dear.
That's it. That'll do it. And I will give the King of Hybern this.
An L? I know that he's just like one gigantic L in general, but that's like an extra L right there.
That is an extra
It's
L.
like a billboard L.
He does really know how to verbally spar, though. I will give him this. Like, rage and fear. I know what you're going to say.
Who's sympathizing with Hybern now?
Jeez,
I'm never going to let you forget that.
I'm not sympathizing with him. I am giving him credit for being really good at this type of warfare. Because Rhys is in like an internal rage, and now the King of Hybern thinks that this is the best time for a evil villain monologue.
And what an evil villain monologue it is. We've already summarized this in previous episodes, including Suriel Teatime dedicated to Hybern, including his why for this war. So I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version here. The Loyalists, which included Hybern, were shut out of this new world that the humans and Fae envisioned. Everybody had a seat at the table, except the Loyalists. Everything about this pissed the Loyalists off, being shut out and therefore stifled, granting mortals access to the Fae's resources and wealth in exchange for nothing. I don't know. I'd argue a millennia of being slaves isn't nothing, but anyway.
What absolutely boils my blood in this scene is that Hybern mentions how he's been rotting away on his island in Hybern, when it has been his choice to stop trade and any other economy boosting actions in Hybern And all the citizens are the ones who are getting punished for it. Like, he is saying, like, oh, we've been rotting away. It's like, my guy, that is your choice. Like, that is what you...
And the whole thing to that is that he's like, they did not want to participate in this new world, and they were just pissed off in general about this new world. So they are very much an all or nothing. We are either going to have nothing to do with all of you, or we are going to ignite another war and just take over all of you and make things back to the way that they were.
Which is why all of Hybern's soldiers, all of the citizens are so fired up and wanting the golden ages back, aka the time of slavery when the High Fae alone were thriving. But what's the fact that he's like, oh, we've been rotting away. I'm like, you are in a pit of your own making, my guy.
So the bottom line that the King of Hybern is conveying is that he is fighting to reclaim what is Hybern's, what is theirs, and what will always be theirs. Hard pivot here. Being an adult has its highs, like getting to stay up late, snuggled up with a good book, or eating dessert before dinner. But it also comes with the boring stuff, like paying taxes and, yes, scheduling doctor's appointments. That's where ZocDoc comes in.
ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and choose the right one for your needs. You can also click to instantly book an appointment. We are talking about in-network appointments with over 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and so much more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical needs you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients.
You can also see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works best for you, and click to instantly book a visit. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. My husband and I have been using ZocDoc since we moved back to Colorado and needed to get, all situated with those necessary doctor appointments and such. It's so easy to use, it's easy to book appointments, and simply feel confident in the doctor you're meeting with.
I have an eye appointment thanks to ZocDoc. When I need to find a new doctor, ZocDoc is my first place to go. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/FF to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That is ZocDoc.com/FF. ZocDoc.com/FF. Enough talking about the King of Hybern and his verbal party tricks for now. Rhys finally has enough power in his veins to hurl a slender javelin of power at the King of Hybern. It hits him in the chest and he falls over dead. Everyone screams, huzzah, and the book is over.
Yay!
I'm just kidding. No, because it goes straight through him. He is an illusion the entire time. He says, quote, "Did you think I'd appear at this battle myself?" Rhys, my guy. Quote, he waved a hand towards the soldiers still watching. "A taste. This battle is only a taste for you to whet your appetite." What a fuck. I just can't stand him.
And then when he vanishes, so does the spell that was over Rhys's power. So Rhys, ever the gentleman, allows the Hybern soldiers on the ship the honor of lifting their blades.
These soldiers who think that they're about to off the High Lord of Night, they're just, oh my God, this is our time. We're cheering. And then Rhys turns them into red mist. So Hybern's an asshole, but I gotta say...
Body works.
Cue the fireworks. Hybern is an asshole, and I can't believe I'm doing this. I gotta say, this is kind of brilliant.
I can't believe you have given me a hard time about putting myself in the King of Hybern's shoes. And now you give me this. And this episode has not gone out yet, but we have another episode on YouTube where you go on and on about how amazing Cersei Lannister is, and I just don't even know who you are anymore.
From Hybern's battle perspective, he is distracting and he is taking the most powerful warrior off the field. Like, that is very intelligent. All the while draining the power from Rhys and the other warriors with a heightened level of magic also on the battlefield. This is very intelligent.
I don't know. Am I allowed to agree, or are you going to accuse me of sympathizing with Hybern again?
Stop sympathizing with the King of Hybern. Oh my God. Battle aside, which, to be honest, I do think the battle strategy is actually second in this scenario. The number one benefit for the King of Hybern here is this is he is fucking with Rhys, and he is achieving it. Not only verbally sparring with him, but the King of Hybern knows that between the surprise attack on Valaris, now the surprise attack on Adriata, and now showing up as an unexpected hologram, this is going to mess with Rhys's head and shake his own confidence as a chess player.
I mean, yeah, the king plays way better chess than Rhys up until any time in the series. Like, actually, really, he dies, and then Amren is unleashed. So the King of Hybern dies knowing that he beat Rhys at chess, even if the good guys do ultimately win. But Rhys never actually beats the King of Hybern.
No, Elaine does. Elaine beats
Yes, I know. And now, of course, like, they do win battles and things like that. But it's, again, so I do have another question here, and it goes right back to the damper on their powers, is that he was wondering who was going to be here, like which High Lord was going to seek him out. But Rhys is like, no, like, this was all just a toy with me. So was the King of Hybern actually knowing that it was going to be Rhys, just knowing who Rhys is and knowing that it was going to be the Night Court who would come to save the day?
I think
and
so.
That's how he just knew, and he knew that it was going to be Rhys? Or was it more of like a blanket, like, let's see who wants to come and play?
I think it's both. I think it's a win-win either situation.
With both Tarquin and Rhys's power unleashed now that the king's spell is lifted, they dominate and shove the Hybern fleet back over the horizon. I can see this just so clearly with their combined darkness and water and wind. I love magic. But let's remember that this is first-person POV Feyre, because she is thrown out of Rhys's mind, nicely and lovingly, of course. And I love when there are limits and consequences with magic. It's so necessary in these fantasy stories because, yes, she was in his mind for too long and she has to reorient herself. The aftermath of the battle and being in his mind for too long have really caught up with her, causing her to vomit, and she's not doing so hot right now. Mor is being such a good friend, taking care of her and assuring her that this is normal to feel so shitty after a battle and that they all experience this too their first time. Again, Feyre's youth and inexperience is on full display, not in a bad way at all, but in a realistic way where she is being guided through these firsts by her family. She doesn't know how to shift back to normalcy after being in a battle like this and experiencing the go, go, go rush of adrenaline like Nicole was saying earlier. I do have to say, I appreciate how the internal consequences of a war are illustrated on the page here. It is not something that happens and our characters quickly move on. It shifts something inside them, specifically Feyre right here. She can't imagine war lasting for years like it did last time. She can even understand a tiny bit why some people would ally with the bad guys to avoid this destruction and death and the marks on their souls. She recognizes the imprint this will have on her own soul for the rest of her very long life. And yet, for the innocent, for the good of this world, she chooses to endure this and have that mark on her soul because it's, again, the right thing to do.
With the battle won, it is time to head to the palace to find her friends, which, quick pause. We need to remember that they are not walking into this palace as heroes because Feyre, Rhys, and thus I'd say by association, the Inner Circle, have blood rubies on their heads. Tarquin has every right to just murder them on the spot in his own palace. So seeing the High Lord of Summer in, guess where? The dining room. It is not joy in his eyes that meets him and his saviors. No, because he believes the arrival of Illyrian warriors and the Inner Circle was to be on Hybern's side and finish the job of Adriata, like we've mentioned.
I mentioned this at the top of the episode about how it makes sense that Tarquin thought our crew was here to finish them off. And while I get his perspective, just how sad is that to hear as Rhys and Feyre? They genuinely connected with Tarquin during their visit to the Summer Court all those months ago. Sure, they came under false pretenses, infiltrated his mind, and stole an extremely valuable item from the Summer Court, but they didn't like doing it. I realize how silly that sounds. Yet Tarquin had previously seen the real Rhys. He recognized who Rhys was under the mask, but then he probably kicked himself for naively judging Rhys. So of course he's cold, of course he's pissed. And yet, he has ultimately been proven right that the Night Court are good guys. I would be conflicted too, Tarquin.
Bordering the Spring Court, some rumors have drifted their way up to Tarquin that continue not painting Feyre in a very good light. And I'll even argue not painting Feyre and not painting the Night Court in the best of lights. As Tarquin reveals here, the Spring Court has officially collapsed from within and the citizens are in official revolt.
Which, might I add, is exactly what Feyre intended. The King of Hybern was even guess how easy it was for me to take over when he was talking to Rhys. And that was literally the whole point for Feyre, because she was like, well, us Night Court people can either go in and take over, but that would make it look bad. So instead, I'm just going to let Hybern do it, and then all the other courts can rally against them.
Yeah, that's 100% on her. Like, that's absolutely on her. This does make Feyre and co look like they're on Hybern's side, like at least to Tarquin, minimum, who already believed that they were working with Hybern because they stole the Book of Breathing's last book. So he already had either suspicions or he had already made up his mind that they were working on the dark side.
I never put that together, that he thought that because they were stealing the Book of Breathings and the King of Hybern has the Cauldron. Like, I did not put that together.
And like, if you're wondering why would they want the Book of Breathings, it nullifies the Cauldron. If I had the most powerful weapon in the entire world and one item nullified it, I would want that one item in my possession so no one else could get their hands on it.
And it can do a lot of other things too, though,
Sure.
because that's why he wanted Feyre. Yep.
Yeah. Feyre, as we've discussed for hours in episode 1 and 2 of our ACOWAR coverage, was driven by revenge while at the Spring Court. And quite frankly, wasn't really hearing anything but her own "I'm right and everyone's wrong" anthem. And there's pluses and minuses to that, again, as we discussed for hours. But now she's starting to see what the consequences of that revenge, and she's really beginning to face it head on. Are we to say that she is to blame for all of this destruction? No, because Hybern is really the main dude here. And even though I think Tarquin is definitely placing blame on someone who is a lot easier to place blame on than Hybern, but Feyre's actions, they did play a role in the greater story. And while she believes she's acting in the right, and even though she was punishing the evil/poor decisions that Tamlin brought into her life and to Prythian as a whole, she is now really, for the first time, learning how others might view/others are affected by the falling house of cards that were at the Spring Court that she triggered, frankly.
So, yeah, maybe it's like 5% her fault. I agree. It is not all of her fault.
No.
The King of Hybern definitely made his own decision to invade this city. And yeah, 5% her fault.
I'm going to go up to 8 just because she infiltrated that one dude's mind and had him like spit lies to everybody.
You know what? Yeah, let's make it an even 8%. Yep.
8 sounds great. So she reaches out to her and Tarquin's common value in the dining room. Quote, "Our dreams are the same." That's it. That's all she says. Something that drew Feyre to Tarquin at the beginning of their, I won't say friendship, but alliance, sure, that works, was his dreamer nature. He believes in a united realm where lesser fairies are equals. He believes, for lack of a better word, a better world. She is still fighting for that. That has not stopped since going back to the Night Court. And here she's speaking to that side of him again. Remember, when he said all the stuff about what he views as the vision for the future, that was what made her really be like, ooh, is this really okay to steal from him? So Feyre right here is telling him in very few words that she is still fighting on the opposite end of Hybern. She is still fighting on the same side as Tarquin.
Well, this doesn't exactly win him over, though.
Which it wouldn't win me over.
Yeah, like, I understand his coldness.
Yes.
He welcomed our crew into his home. He gave Rhys a chance that few others would ever grant him, and Tarquin even gave him the benefit of the doubt against his advisor's advice. And Tarquin was made to look like a hoodwinked fool when the Night Court ended up stealing from him. So of course Tarquin's not going to instantly forgive them, even if they did come to his aid, because from his perspective, Feyre is still the one to blame. So she came here to clean up her own mess, and that doesn't deserve gratitude. But the Night Court's presence here does still open up his mind to attending the meeting. Remember, before this, he hadn't responded to the meeting invitation, and the Inner Circle weren't sure if he was going to come. Even if he is a visionary who Feyre believes would innately want to attend the meeting to help fight for the way of life, for freedom in Prythian, and for equality. But he's been mistrustful of the Night Court. He's still pissed at them here. But even if he is still mad at them, they have now earned his trust, at least a component of it, which is what is going to ultimately convince him to attend the meeting. The Night Court is not working with Hybern. They have proven that in the biggest way possible, that they are actually working against Hybern, and they want to continue to do so with Tarquin's help, just like they did today together in Adriata.
In the hills outside of Adriata, the Illyrian Legion faces the aftermath of the battle, and it seems that each of our Inner Circle members has a role to play. Azriel has set up a tent to organize the information pouring in from his scouts and spies about the Hybern fleet retreating, not to Spring though, but back to Hybern. Cassian, who is just being the MVP, is limping around to all the soldiers in the camp who have yet to be looked at, and he's offering them words of praise on how they fought or comforting words depending on what they need in the moment.
My empathetic Illyrian for the win. I just love him so much.
Moore is lending a hand wherever she can, and Rhys is being ever the High Lord, alert and clear, quote, everything he should be, a High Lord confident in his victory, whose forces had smashed through the Hybern fleet and saved the city of innocence. However, Fae-vorite is struggling to muster any of Rhys's ease. Now, to be fair, he has had hundreds of years to settle into this role and to learn how to put on this sense of ease, whereas this is just yet another moment of her really struggling with this very new role of High Lady. So Feyre instead keeps busy, replacing bowls of water, pinning down screaming soldiers. And as we learned about Feyre in the beginning of ACOWAR, she is not someone who enjoys being idle. She is someone who finds strength in moving forward, doing something to help, even if it is replacing a water bowl as High Lady of the Night Court. And personally, this is something that I really connect. I think you and I both really connect with when it comes to Feyre's personality. When it comes to any type of high intensity situation, I would so much rather be on my feet, moving, doing something than standing still. It like gives me a sense of purpose. Are you the same way?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I can't not do something. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest, knowing our personalities. But finally, when Feyre's legs give out, she sits down and she finds herself waking up in a bed because she fell asleep face first in the mud. Poor Feyre.
She and Rhys have their first real conversation following the battle, and it brings us back to what we've mentioned before about this book's romance being very different from the tension and getting together of ACOWAR. What we see on these pages is an established partnership, two soulmates who are very much in love and trust one another. Their romance is not the plot of this book, but rather woven into the bigger story and part of who these two are and how they interact with one another. Like how Rhys asks her how she's feeling. She almost says fine, but then admits that she's still figuring out how to feel. She can be completely honest with her partner. Rhys sympathizes with Feyre, reminding her that it's a lot to process this war and it's okay for her to not know how to feel. Even he is not immune to war, despite his age and experience. Quote, so many shadows clouded those violet eyes. Feyre says to both him and to herself about her worries for him. Quote, you are not going to die in this war, Rhysand. Note the use of his full name. It offers an edge of extra seriousness. And then she cups his face with two hands.
Oh my God. It has been so long since those words have been uttered on this podcast. I miss it.
Totally different context, but I saw that and I was like, oh my God. But in all seriousness, Rhys admits how the king does have the upper hand and he's just toying with him. Rhys is being outplayed and it is weighing on his conscience, tearing down any confidence he has. So his partner recognizes she has to be the one with strength and confidence and hope right now. She feels this despair too, but she knows she can't crumble because he needs her to be strong for him. Even if her eyes are burning as she sees his shoulders caving in, a leader who is emotionally defeated. She can't feel like that right now either, even if she wants to, because if they're both like that, then there is no hope. One of them always has to be the stronger one, and right now it is her turn. Which brings us to Feyre's idea about taking the mask off so their desperately needed allies can see the real them. We have talked endlessly about Rhys's mask all these centuries and how well he's played the big, bad, scary High Lord of the Night Court who rules over the Court of Nightmares and terrorizes people with his cool, calm cruelty.
Even earlier when they were in the dining room with Tarquin, Rhys was ever the High Lord of the Night Court and he was wearing his mask. He was cockily, joking, confidently swaggering. He was even wingless despite having them out in battle, which I do find interesting. He vanished them prior to entering the dining room. But Rhys having his mask on as the High Lord of Night, it did nothing to calm Tarquin's fury. And in fact, I'd actually say it made it worse. Feyre was doing some good, and then Rhys came in and he was like, wasn't it obvious that we were mates? And Tarquin was like, get the fuck out of here, my guy. I can't stand you right now.
Well, and this is exactly why Feyre has come to this conclusion. First of all, masks aside, they need to move the High Lord's meeting up. It needs to be in 3 days instead of 9, because every single day matters, as we were saying earlier.
Which it does, and it will still be too late because on day 2 of the meeting, the wall will come down. Sadly.
Yep. And when they arrive at this meeting, the inner circle needs to be their true selves. The whole reason for Rhys's mask no longer applies. He did it to protect the secret of Velaris. And now, thanks to those mortal queens and the Hybern attack, Velaris is not a secret anymore. Tarquin and the others should know the truth about Rhys's goodness. If the Night Court wants the rest of Prythian to ally with them, they need to gain some trust, and that starts with honesty. Taking off the mask and simply being their real selves is leading by example. The courts have played political games for centuries. I could even say thousands of years. And look where it's gotten all of them. By the Night Court removing themselves from this political game, and I'll say like rising up, hopefully the others will be inclined to as well. And that is one big step closer to truly uniting as one Prythian and fighting the common enemy versus playing these games behind their masks with one another, and it's honestly a distraction from the bigger goal. Rhys, perhaps surprisingly, is very open to this idea. Yes. His one counterpoint, he only has one, is that the High Lords might be kind of angry at the lies that the Night Court has fed them over the centuries. Feyre pushes back that they'll make it clear, don't worry, that they understand their feelings and that there was no alternative way to protect their people. Note her use of our people, fully embracing being the High Lady of the Night Court. Her reasoning is that if they come clean with their genuinely good intentions, the centuries-old masks will be more forgivable. And yes, while we've highlighted how Feyre is young and can be naive when it comes to war and politics, this is her human heart on full display. And I'm not going to fault her for that. And I'll even say that she's right in this sense. The Fae have had centuries to play these political games, hold grudges, and metaphorically play chess with one another.
I will also point out that Feyre has so rarely worn a mask herself. She did not bother to have one in the human realm. She did not bother to have one in the Spring Court. She actually actively chose not to. She went under the mountain and bravely declared her love. She was very vulnerable, and that's kind of what got her in the situation. And really, it wasn't until the Court of Nightmares last book when she really bothered to have a mask on for the first time. So while these Fae are much older than her, she really has more experience being vulnerable and showing her true self than they do.
That's a really good point. But when they all have to face a common enemy, Feyre is right. It is time to at least try and, like I said, lead by example. Doing what one must to protect their people is a relatable and familiar concept to almost every other High Lord. So when it comes down to it, they all need to focus on the bigger picture here, folks. And for the most part, this will work, right? But we will get to all of that when we get to next episode. I'm so excited. And while it's not on the page, it's almost like you can feel this weight of the mask lifting from Rhys's shoulders. Quote, "We'll show them the Court of Dreams," he said quietly. But there is one teeny tiny thing that they agree should be kept hush-hush, and that is Feyre's powers she stole. No, were gifted by the High Lords. Good job correcting your mate, Rhys. That's subconscious from Tamlin runs strong. As much as me and Feyre were just talking about leading by example with honesty and how that's the only true way to come together as a united front against Hybern, I'm on her side with this keeping a secret. Because yes, revealing her powers from all 7 of them would be a big risk for distraction from the main goal of uniting together. And their honesty on that matter could actually backfire and turn the High Lords against them. Why, you ask? How is this different from showing they've always worn masks? Because, from my interpretation, this directly affects each of the High Lords in a very personal way, or so they might feel. Someone has, major air quotes, taken their powers. Something that makes them special no longer applies to just them, and that magnified, unique magic helped put her in a position of power, making her a very real threat here. Now, this is Feyre taking precautions because, after all, the sort of accidental reveal will end up being more, I'll call it, move pastable for most of the High Lords. I don't know. What do you think, Nicole? Is it best that they kept her powers hidden, or does it make them seem more manipulative as they take off their masks? Because it really could be seen as luring the others in with a false sense of vulnerability, only to, have a dagger behind their backs. The dagger being her 7 combined powers, making her stronger than all of them put together like the Avatar.
To be quite honest, I was 100% on that right there. I was on team be truthful or bust, because or else it's a backstabby feeling. Until you said how it would distract from the overall goal. And I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, like that's a really good point. My only qualm is that no matter what, it would have come out. I don't know. It does feel a little let us lure you into a false sense of vulnerability and then stab you behind your back. However, I agree that it doesn't need to be this huge vulnerability dump right off the bat. It can be a little bit more, let's dip our toes into this. So
yeah.
Yes. Summer can get expensive. Trips, patio, cocktails, rebuilding the city of Adriata again. And when you have financial goals, you need to decide what's worth it. Don't worry, you're worth it, Adriata. We love you. A Chime checking account helps you reach your financial goals while still enjoying your summer.
We understand how important having strong credit can be for those big life moments. Chime's Credit Builder Visa credit card helps you build credit every single day. There's no annual fees, interest, or credit check to apply, and you can use it everywhere Visa credit cards are accepted.
My favorite part of Chime is how easy it is to access your money. Chime offers over 60,000 fee-free ATMs. That's more than the top 3 national banks combined. And you can easily find one near you with the Chime app.
With Chime's secure credit card, you can improve your credit scores all summer long. Get started today at chime.com/fantasy fangirl. That's Chime, CHIME.com/fantasy fangirl. Chime feels like progress.
The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal and OTC advance fees may apply. Terms and conditions apply. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
And while the fandom has opinions about what's next, when Reese commented how their first trip here to Adriata was when he let himself hope that there was a future with Farah, this is what I put in my annotations. Quote, tearing up. Of course they bang after this. They refer back to the stars who listen, and it's just like, oh,
I love that moment. Reese's clothes vanish as Feyre goes to kiss South down Reese's body, and the clothes vanishing, it can never not make me giggle. I just want to imagine you're hooking up with a guy and just out of nowhere, poof, his clothes are just gone. That is so wild. And Feyre proceeds.
For me, that's part of the fun. I know. Wait a second,
right?
I was going to do that. Yeah, anyway.
Take that away from me. And Feyre proceeds to give Reese quite an experience. Quote, I can't believe I'm doing this. His growls of pleasure filled the tent, drowning the distant cries of the injured and dying. All right, let's talk about this, because the fandom has some thoughts about the scene, feeling like it's super cringy, like it's distasteful, like it's not up to the par of their previous romantic scenes, we'll say. And while personally, I don't disagree specifically around the cringy statement, I do think that there are many understandable reasons as to why the scene was on the page. Needing to feel like the person you love is alive and safe and you are with them physically. Feyre wanting Reese to relax in this moment of just pure survival and vulnerability.
There's that moment when she notices, quote, some of the light coming back to his eyes, as they started verbally playing with one another. This has been a heavy conversation they've been having. Remember what we were just talking about with his shoulders curving in, and he's really defeated. He's in despair. He needs that connection to feel something positive again, that spark of life. And she, being his mate, needs to give that to him. This is something small that she can do for him right now when she is in solution mode.
They're wanting each other to feel a bit of peace amidst this chaos of war. And they also don't know how many more nights they have left with each other like this. All of this to say, I can 100% understand the reasons as to why this scene is here. But the smash cut of giving Reese a blowjob that drowns out the cries of the injured and dying to, quote, only a few more Illyrians died during the night. That is a jarring tone change.
Real quickly, while we're on that, she said on multiple occasions during that chapter, only so many people died. And that was a little very, I'll say, high lady-esque, where it's for somebody who every single life matters, she's very nonchalant about only a few people dying, where it's well, those people had families, they matter.
And that's why, and going to Cassian, he is so deeply affected by even one of his soldiers dying. And I'll say this, again, I understand the reasons why the scene is here, but personally, I think, again, especially with the smash cut, the smash cut is really what gets me in the scene. it weakens the overall point and the meaning behind the scene, just needing to feel your partner with you, needing to make sure they're okay. That I do think that is what really cheapens the moment.
So I think that goes to show the difference between what the readers want to experience versus the reality of the situation. I agree with you on every single one of your points about why this is included. Needing to feel alive after something so horrific, feeling close to your partner, all of that. And it isn't the tone that readers want to experience alongside our characters in this moment. I'll be honest, I think a fade to black in this instance, or even like with the second after battle sex scene, which we do indeed get another one, it is more vague, it would have captured this moment better for the reader. Again, I see why it's there for the character's sake, but I don't see why it's here for the reader's sake. And I think that's something that SJM could have executed a little bit better.
Yes, everything that you just said, yes. While Cassian and Azriel stay to lead the Illyrians to their new camp along the Night Court's southern border, Feyre, Rhys, and Mor all winnow back home to Valaris, where they are met with an awaiting Nesta, who immediately asks what happened. And when they don't tell her outright what she's specifically asking, she follows up with, "Where is he?" And Rhys is like, "Who are you talking about there, Nesta?" And she says, "Cassian." Quote, Feyre's inner monologue. I didn't think I'd ever heard his name from her lips. Cassian had always been him or that one, and Nesta had been pacing in the foyer. Oh, this is beautiful.
I know I've said this almost every episode, but I am so obsessed with their slow burn. I knew it was an ACOMAF and, of course, an ACOWAR before this deep dive, and, I've read the book several times, but wow, their tension, I won't even call it sexual tension, just slow burn, oh my God, tension. It is everywhere in this book, everywhere.
I'd call it like the connection tension. Like that's what it feels like. But one of the reasons this Nesta saying Cassian's name really piques Feyre's interest is because Nesta's never really shown a lot of interest towards Cassian bluntly. She's been snappy. She's been rude. She's never even close to worried about anyone except for Elaine, really. So this is, I'm ignoring the moment where she went after Feyre in ACOTAR because A, we as readers didn't see that, and we also learned about it after the fact. So this is very startling to get this kind of reaction from Nesta, who has been anxiety pacing and asking about Cassian specifically. But more, she does not like what she sees. She snaps back at Nesta that he is busy, and when he does return, quote, "Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth."
Oof. Do we give Mor an L on that one? Or do we recognize why she's being so protective of Cassian? And like you said, Nesta hasn't really shown the inner circle any warmth toward him.
I'm leaning towards not an L because, yes, but does Mor need to be this rude? No. I think Mor...
I agree.
Yeah. Because as Feyre notes, Mor has not been ruffled about this, like when it comes to Cassian's past lovers, which I guess we didn't really get any like one-on-one time with them, like, or at least we through Feyre's POV, but still, this icy tone is very foreign coming from Chipper Mor. But let's take a moment and look at this situation through Mor's POV. First off, she is used to having Cassian as a physical and emotional buffer between her and Azriel for literally 500 years. As we've noted on the pod before, Mor sees Cassian starting to care for Nesta, and she also sees her closest friend and, again, buffer, leave her side. And there's this anger, and I'll even call it jealousy, that she's feeling abandoned in their relationship, in this thing that they've found so much, she's specifically found so much comfort in. Secondly, based off of what she's seen from Nesta and how Nesta interacts with her family, she does not think that Nesta is worthy of her kind, sweet, empathetic friend. As we will learn in A Court of Silver Flames, Nesta feels unworthy of love and support that Cassian has to offer, which has resulted in her putting up this really hard exterior. I'm not excusing her rudeness by any means that way. I'm more just saying this is her reasoning behind it.
Exactly. But like him with her, she can't stay away, and Mor notices. In this instance, too, Mor is protecting her friend Cassian because he is in a mentally bad state right now. He is the general of the Illyrian legions, and some of his warriors died. Maybe only a few, but some of them did still die. He's right now telling the families of the slain, and Cassian always shoulders a certain amount of blame and guilt. He feels he failed these fallen warriors as their leader. As unafraid of death as he is, it still deeply affects him, especially when it comes to others. So yeah, Mor knows this about about him and knows he's a little emotionally, I don't want to say fragile right now, but on edge.
Yes,
he's emotionally on edge right now. And the last thing he needs is Nesta being rude to him. So Mor is ensuring that doesn't happen. Did she make an assumption and be rude to Nesta first? Absolutely. But did she do it based on past experience and basically got ahead of whatever rude thing Nesta might say? Again, based on past interactions with Nesta, that's a yes. Could she have read the room a little more and noticed Nesta was genuinely worried about Cassian? Yes, but she has a bad opinion about Nesta, so she's not going to either notice or care in the way that Feyre does. So ultimately, I'm not going to give Mor an L here either. Nesta dug her own hole and Nesta knows it. But Mor, you still came out swinging when your opponent clearly wasn't wanting to be in the ring. So you get a not cool look of disapproval.
Nesta sits back down with Amren, saying that she doesn't care if Cassian returns. And to be quite honest, it's so sad because Nesta lets her walls down for a fucking second, and people, specifically Mor, expects the worst from her. Like you said, yes, this is her digging her own hole and she's now having the repercussions of it. But when someone expects the worst of you, you tend to snap those walls right back up and give her that hard exterior so that she doesn't get hurt any more than it's this horrible vicious cycle that she's in.
I also want to point out what Mor says to Nesta is 10 times worse than the joke Rhys made about Valaris not being able to handle Nesta some chapters ago. But before Feyre can respond, Rhys jumps in right here. He doesn't make a big deal out of it, but he does give a stern Mor. He learned his lesson for now about treating Nesta with more respect. Emphasis on the for now part of that. And he knows how uncomfortable this makes Feyre. So he's immediately reacting and shutting Mor's behavior down to then pivot the conversation. Let's talk about this other thing here.
Well, because Nesta's not the only one who was definitely not at all worried, no. Upon learning that Varian is safe and sound, Amren finally relaxes, and as she turns to leave, Feyre notices a necklace of rubies hidden beneath Amren's shirt, which was a gift from Varian last book when they went to the summer court. I'm going to start watching this like a hawk, because is Varian Amren's mate, or is this the one instance where two lovers are just that, they're lovers and not mates?
I'm inclined to say Amren can't have a mate. At least right now, she isn't of this world. Maybe once when she becomes High Fae, maybe there's like a thing where you got to be able to go to the bathroom to have a mate and eat food. Why did I not lead with that?
Thank you for reminding me of that conversation that I think I've blocked out of my head. Let's go to the prison.
The King of Hybern called the attack on Adriata just a taste of what to come, and he won't be wrong. This scares Feyre so much as the reality of their dire situation really sinks in. The Bone Carver's aid isn't so much of a really, really, really nice to have. It's now escalated to a, oh my god, we must have this in order to even stand a chance. The king knows about their histories, who they might try to get for allies. He is always one step ahead of them, as we've been talking about. But the king won't anticipate the Bone Carver. They could actually have an element of surprise on their side with him.
Which it is definitely one of the only times that they do have the element of surprise in this book, because the king was not expecting death gods on the battlefield. And to top off all of this, I really think that Feyre was super spooked by seeing Rhys get knocked down another peg by the King of Hybern, even if it was just an illusion. She knows her mate. She knows that internally that shook him, and she is desperately throwing spaghetti at the wall, anything for them to be able to take control back.
So in the aftermath of the battle, even before bathing the blood and dirt off herself, Feyre goes to meet with the Bone Carver, and of course Rhys trails along too. She sets the tone of her visit by greeting him with, "Find another object you desire." She's not begging him yet. Not asking, she is demanding as the High Lady of the Night Court who needs to protect her people. And the Bone Carver's like, no, all I want is the Ouroboros mirror. Oh, and he's just like basking in her perfume of death after that battle.
This is all while Rhys is waiting in the hall, not entirely because he doesn't want to see the Bone Carver. That's a little bit there, but it's mostly because I think it'll wound the Bone Carver's ego if they visit the Carver and Rhys doesn't deem him worthy of being seen. That's kind of brilliant. I'm not going to lie.
I think it's also because this is also kind of Feyre's deal here with the Bone Carver, and this is her mission, and so he's giving her that platform to be able to do that. The Carver asks Feyre why she's afraid of claiming the mirror, are, aka why she's afraid of facing her true self. She admits to it in so many words, pushing back that isn't he afraid too? But he gives a little smile and says, no. The Carver isn't afraid of who he truly is. In fact, he's probably curious.
Like, I love this idea of him wanting the mirror. Like, obviously, there's the reason he wants the mirror because he wants to see if Fae-vorite is worthy, yada, yada, yada. But, like, I love this, like, little subplot idea that he wants it so he can finally know what he looks like.
He is open about fearing his siblings and why he chooses to hide in this prison. I also think as a death god, the mirror doesn't have the same magical effect on him. You know, he and his sister who used to own the mirror, they aren't afraid to look into it because they do not feel or experience the same as Fae. I do think that he would absolutely be able to see himself, but it wouldn't be the same internal struggle. It would just be like a literal mirror for him.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look how pretty I am.
Look how pretty I am. Well, one of my favorite moments of the scene is Fae-vorite in her desperation. She starts to, I'll say slightly flirt with the bone carver. She says, quote, I could offer you so many other things. My voice turned low, honeyed, which, Fae-vorite, you're looking at your son when you're saying these words.
I think that this is more of her trying to sweet talk, like as a person in power, not flirt, but sweet talk. Like how all the villains do to our girls, like, you know, our FMCs.
I feel like whenever something is described as honeyed, it's like got that element of like,
I think it's more of a facade of trying to be nice when you've got ulterior motives.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to dig myself a deeper hole here because there's a second moment. And that's when Rhys does finally come into the room. He's still got all of his battle clothes on. Both of them do. And the Carver says, quote, oh, I much prefer you bloodied up. Sir?
Get your mind out of the gutter, Nicole. He's a death god. Of course he prefers them all bloodied up.
That is not the tonality I read that in.
Oh man,
God.
That War 10 stuff really.
I need some kind of sexual tension, and I didn't get it in the War 10, so I'm getting it here. Side note, though, we never learn who Rhys sees here in this scene. So if you had to speculate, who would you think that he sees in the Bone Carver?
I assumed it was Durian again. That was a total assumption, but I just assumed.
I guess that works. Yeah. That works.
Who do you think?
I have no idea. I asked that question and I didn't have an option. I mean, like, it could be a number of people. You know, like when we think about who are, it is someone who is involved in a death or in a future death of yours. So he could literally be seeing the Cauldron. He could be seeing the King of Highburn. He could also be seeing the
Cauldron to talk.
And just like you know, those like googly eyes and like a carved mouth, like, oh, I much prefer you bloodied up.
Oh my gosh. I do think it's Durian. I think that it's still Durian. When she insists that the Bone Carver pick something else, he explains how most things don't do him any good down here. But then he gives a bone-chilling suggestion. Quote, what about your firstborn? A secret smile as he gestured with that small boy's hand to himself. Several things with this. First, I know there's been debate about whether he is the image of Nyx or a second child, but this right here cements he is the image of Nyx, their firstborn child. It also reveals his image to Feyre, at least to some degree, to Rhys right here, leading him to ask his mate after they leave what she saw, and she shows him within her mind so he can see their son's image too.
I agree with you, yes. And I'm absolutely leaning towards the Carver being Nyx, full stop. But we do have to point out that he does not have wings, and there's a new element to this discovery. Yes, he could vanish them like Daddy-O does, but when I was re-listening to Silver Flames, it was mentioned that Rhys was born without wings. Since Nyx is born with wings, maybe it's like an either or. You can vanish them either way, whether you're born with or without. Or maybe, honestly, SJM didn't know that Nyx was going to have wings, and that whole like plot point was going to happen until after she wrote ACOWAR. When
I definitely think that's part of it. If Nyx didn't have wings, there goes that whole side plot of Silver Flames. I'm convinced Nyx can vanish them too, but he had to be born with them because drama. And he's technically 3/4 Illyrian, since Feyre was Illyrian when they conceived, so that extra quarter then Rhys gives him wings when he's born.
Okay, I accept that logic, yes.
Second, about this bone-chilling suggestion about giving him their firstborn, I don't think the bone carver actually wants their firstborn.
No.
I figured we should be at least clear on that. He's toying with Feyre, voicing and confirming the image he is to her. He's both seeing how desperate she is and reminding her that what he wants is focused on Feyre and Feyre alone. No one else is in danger or technically affected like her firstborn son would be, and it's all up to her and her inner strength to make this happen. She has to look in the mirror. She has to face her own true self, and that is what will help him.
So with an unwavering stance that the only thing the bone carver wants is the Ouroboros, Rhys tosses him a chicken bone that they had for lunch. Like, imagine just like a nommed on wing. And he's just like, there you go. And they leave, which that's a fuck you to the bone carver.
Oh, yeah. We talk a lot about how much of a vibe summer is all the time on this podcast, but oh my goodness, it can do a number on my hair. It is dry and hot here in Colorado, if you did not know that, which makes my hair feel brittle and dull without moisture in the air. The fact is, even if we're not aware of environmental changes in our day-to-day, our hair sure is, and that's where Prose comes in to save the day, and my hair.
Prose makes beauty personal with truly custom formulas that are literally just for you. And they even have your name on the bottle. It's great.
It's so nice, yes.
Each formula takes so many factors, like your environment, into account. Each and every bottle is made to order based on an in-depth consultation that covers everything from your beauty goals, your natural hair tendencies, how you style it. Like, for instance, I use a lot of heat on my hair. They were absolutely like, here's all the heat protectant you need. And like Lexi said, also weather and humidity where you live. From millions of possible formulas, only one is uniquely yours.
Prose gives my hair new life. It is shiny and soft, easier to style, and it still looks good when I don't style it, and it just feels healthier all around. I also love how Prose only uses naturally powerful and proven effective ingredients to target our specific concerns and goals. And it's not just custom hair care. They also offer custom skincare to help you put your best face forward.
Prose is so confident that you'll love your results that they're offering our listeners an exclusive trial. 50% off your first hair care subscription at prose.com/Fantasy Fangirls. That is PROSE.com/Fantasy Fangirls for your free consultation and 50% off your custom routine. Prose.com/Fantasy Fangirls. Well, that is the shortest prison section we've ever done because we are all of a sudden
kidding.
We are back in the townhouse and we are starving. So the High Lord and Lady enter the kitchen, but a group is already in there covered in flour. Nuala, Caradwyn, and Elaine, who has a sparkle in her eye. Yay, Elaine, for making bread. I love that Elaine is just picking every single pandemic hobby, like between gardening, like keeping plants alive, and bread making.
I was literally going to say the same thing.
Which one did you do?
I worked in software, so I just went like completely like, I'm just going to work. And I took up running. That's what I did. I took up running. Yeah. Yes.
That's good. Yes, that's right. But as Elaine sees Feyre, that sparkle in her eye starts to blink out, almost like she's been caught in her own happiness. Much like Feyre needed, Elaine needs time to come back into herself. But she, like Feyre, needed also to be surrounded by new people who didn't treat her like she was breakable. Those two confidants ended up becoming Nuala and Caradwyn. And Asriel. Definitely Asriel. And I will say, I don't know if this is connected, but it maybe not, but it might be. She does finally have this moment where she's smiling. It's the day after Lucian leaves.
Seeing Elaine doing something, learning something with a little spark in her, it gives Feyre a sense of hope for her sister. Where she physically puts her hand on her chest, she feels a sense of hope and I'll call it relief and happiness, feeling it so deeply in her heart. And Sweet Rhys tells her this is how he felt when Feyre smiled that night they dined along the Sidra. So I went back to that moment in ACOWAR that Rhys is referring to, where Feyre tells the restaurant owner, quote, I've lived in the mortal realm and lived in other courts, but I've never had food like this, food that makes me feel awake. Rhys's eyes were on her and, quote, his face was softer, more contemplative than I've ever seen it, his mouth slightly open. I'm guessing this is the moment that he's referring to right here, because honestly, she doesn't smile at any point on the page until a tiny smile when she's pushing Rhys about Mor and Asriel and Cassian. Because, of course, I don't think that is the smile that he is referring to here, though. That is beside the point. The point is, that night they dined in Valaris was the first time Feyre felt her own spark of life again. And it brought Rhys so much inner hope and happiness like she's experiencing here with Elaine. And it's just so sweet.
I love that both of these moments with the Archeron sisters are over food, which is such a vibe. And honestly,
Yes.
I feel that deeply.
You think they have spices in that bread?
They fucking better. They like rosemary. Oh, like a salted rosemary
Or like
garlic bread.
Yeah, I was going to say rosemary garlic bread. Yeah.
Oh.
I once went to this restaurant in Denver and they had a lavender bread and it was absolutely incredible.
I am going to need us to pause right now and go get food if we keep talking like this.
All right, fast forward a few days and dang, our crew has been busy as they prepare for the High Lords meeting. The endless back and forth has continued in a frenzy over these 2 days until they finally decided on the Dawn Court with hours to spare the night before the meeting. Talk about a last minute decision. But seriously, let's walk through why the meeting place is set in the Dawn Court. First of all, it's close enough to the middle of Prythian, so it's not too far a distance for any of the courts. Under the Mountain used to be the neutral meeting place for the courts, but then Amarantha went and ruined it. Plus, it's sealed now, so even if they weren't completely traumatized, they still wouldn't be able to access it anymore. Does distance really matter when they're all powerful enough to winnow? I don't know, but I like to think it's more of the principle of the matter. Like if it all goes to hell, no High Lord is at a disadvantage of being too far from their own court. It is also important, especially to the hosting court, to have some neutral territory flanking one border. So the meeting place isn't surrounded by two other courts. That could create a sense of being trapped, so to speak. The Winter Court was the only other option with a neutral border, meaning the middle, and its High Lord refuses to host because Amarantha unleashed too much horror and he's just not taking any risks.
Fair.
Also, the High Lord of the Dawn Court, Thesan, and Rhys are on decent terms, so Thesan is willing to hear the Night Court out and host them in a manner other courts just aren't. Thesan was the second High Lord to agree to attend the meeting all those chapters ago. The Dawn Court is also usually neutral in conflicts, so they're on decent or at least neutral terms with the other courts too. Less drama, that's important for the hosting court. Also, 6 of the 7 courts have agreed to attend. That's good. Tarquin agreed to come, and Baron was the last to say, fine, I'll go. The only one who hasn't deigned to respond is Tamlin.
Tamlin would be the guy at the wedding who received an invite but couldn't deign to RSVP. And so he just shows up and you're like, we don't have a place setting for you.
Yes.
Dude.
Yes. And then he gets really mad and says our friendship is completely over. And then he throws a huge fit about it.
And I'd be like, goodbye.
Yeah, right. Despite being on decent terms with the Dawn Court, the night before, our crew is not taking any risks. They are still going over every kernel of information they've ever learned about Thesan's palace to know escape routes, possible pitfalls, and traps. They learned their lesson the hard way in Highburn, and that failure continues to haunt them. They need to be ready for literally anything in this upcoming High Lords meeting.
Is that the theme of today's episode? Be ready, Scouts of America. Be ready for anything. Be prepared.
You'd think they would have learned their lesson by now, but they are actually, I should say, they are learning their lesson, and that's the point of today's episode.
That's the point, yes. It is the day of the meeting, and it's time for a fit watch. Everyone is looking gorgeous, so let's go through their outfits. Rhys is in his usual black jacket and pants, but his wings are out because the masks are off, and his wings are gleaming as if he polished them.
It's so cute. It's like the first time he's going to show his wings to everybody else. He wants them to look pretty.
Maybe this is one of the reasons I'm so attracted to Rhys, because this is absolutely something my husband would do.
Oh my gosh, it absolutely would be. Yes.
I love it. Azriel and Cassian are in their Illyrian armor with all 7 of their siphons also polished and glistening. Moore is in a midnight blue gown, not red for the first time, I think, since Starfall, because she was in white during Starfall last book. But her blue gown is cut in very much the same way with the revealing panels. It ends in the gauzy skirts. However, it is much more regal than her normal outfits. Feyre is in her same dress from Starfall, but she made some adjustments. adding sheer silk fabric to the shoulders, looking almost like a starlight cape. Quote, if Rhys was night triumphant, I was a star that only glowed thanks to his darkness, the light only visible because of him. Shameless plug for Lexi's starlight dress from Sophisticate, which is this dress.
YouTube listeners, you can see I'm holding up the design here from Nephi Garcia, and it's so pretty.
It's so pretty. Oh my God. We'll have the link in the show notes because we also have a discount code if you want to get the dress as well. Or my midnight dress because it's so pretty too. Feyre's hair is swept up into an elegant arc over her head, showing off her crown. That crown that the night prior, her and Rhys, because they couldn't sleep, went to a chamber in the House of Wind holding the family jewels, where he gave her the choice of many crowns to pick for her to wear to the meeting. Also, this is a chamber that Feyre walked in and she's like, oh, I'm rich. I got money. And it also makes her very uncomfortable, but we'll also talk more about that in Frost and Starlight. This crown of silver and diamond stars, all in various phases of the moon, is heavier than her previous ones. Quote, not unwelcome, but ... strange. I imagine this is the symbolism of the duty of being High Lady starting to really be felt by her, start really feeling the weight on her shoulders. It's not heavy, it's just different, it's new, and by that, it's uncomfortable. But this is also meaning that her title is really starting to sink in, strangeness and all.
I love this so much. And I have another idea to explore in Maasverse Madness for why she is drawn to it and why it might be so heavy. Hint, it has to do with her lineage and being of the Fae descent.
The symbolism of the crowns go much further back than just this specific crown, though, as Feyre realizes. Rhys has been crowning her at every formal event from the beginning of our series, from dancing with him under the mountain to meeting the mortal queens.
And in the Court of Nightmares.
All of these moments, notably, were when she was not yet High Lady. And most of these moments were when they weren't even formally together. I think only one of them, and that's the second meeting with the mortal queens, is when they were actually together.
And like Feyre, we remember how she was terrified of being given a crown in Tamlin's court. She didn't want it. She didn't feel she deserved it. But here with Rhys, all along with Rhys in the Night Court, she knows this is her home and she belongs here. These are her people that she will do anything for. She has, in her own way, earned this crown.
As we pointed out in our ACOWAR coverage, this was SJM priming us for this moment of not just Feyre having the title of High Lady, but now officially stepping into the role and looking and feeling the part. And it's just in time to show off the newest High Lady to the High Lords of Prythian. But last but not least, Nesta comes downstairs in a gown of darkest blue, no jewelry, no crown, no ornamentation needed. Wait! Why is Nesta all dressed up? For that, we have to go back 2 days in the dining room. Nesta asks Feyre why she went off to Adriata without a second thought. This is such a Nesta scene because her sentences are short, and for the most part, besides the question I just stated, they were all statements rather than questions. They were all with periods rather than a question mark. But Feyre responds with, quote, because I had to, because people needed help. This is the embodiment of who Feyre is, like Lexi talked about at the beginning of the episode. The innocent needed help, and in her eyes, she had no choice but to go and help them. Similarly to how her family needed help, and she learned how to hunt so she could help and provide. This is a personality trait in Feyre that Nesta does not have, and honestly is jealous, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but I'm going to use it anyway, of Feyre's ability to drop everything and selflessly help the innocent. Nesta feels like this is a personality trait she should have, but she's frustrated that anger and resentment can get the best of her and cloud her judgment and her selflessness. And while Nesta always knew this personality trait about her sister, hearing her say it outright that people needed help and that's why she went, it shifted something in Nesta. So remember when Feyre asked Nesta to come to this meeting and to share her story about being turned High Fae, hoping in doing so that it would save many innocent lives by getting the High Lords to band together and fight against the King of Hybern. But Nesta shot her down with a firm no. However, Nesta, on the day of the High Lords meeting, walks downstairs and announces to everyone that she is going with them. First, she does not want to be seen as a coward. She is now surrounded by people who do rush into the line of fire to protect others in a way that she hasn't really ever been before. And yes, these people that she's now surrounded with definitely includes Cassian, someone I would say she definitely looks up to, though would never admit it. She is just now opening her eyes up to this type of bravery that she's only experienced a few times in her life. But also, secondly, because those words her sister said are really sticking with her. Despite that Adriata was dangerous, despite the fact that they are considered enemies of the Summer Court, Feyre risked her life for those people. So Nesta will fight for those who are innocent and who others will choose to not fight for, the humans. She chooses to be brave, sharing her own trauma if it will help save those innocent lives. So the 6 of them prepare to leave for the High Lord's meeting, which I am feral to get to next episode. Oh my God.
I can't wait.
Fun fact about me, I used to sleep like a baby unless there was a High Lord's meeting I was stressed about. But when I turned 30, I suddenly started waking up in the middle of the night or like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and unable to get back to sleep. And you know what my least favorite part is? It is I feel terrible the next day and I can barely focus on anything.
Sleep is the foundation of whole body health. When we sleep well, our minds and our bodies perform at their best. So how do we all get to this dream state? I'm so glad you asked. Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep.
I gave Beam a try after trying other sleep aids, and hands down, this is the best solution I've tried. I'm falling asleep easier. I'm sleeping through the night. I'm waking up at the actual time I'm supposed to wake up, and I'm not groggy in the morning. Our listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, aptogen, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed.
Plus, Beam Dream is easy to add to your nighttime routine. Just mix Dream into hot water or milk, froth, and enjoy before bed. It's such a nice little treat. Beam is trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. It's no wonder Forbes and the New York Times are all talking about them. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/fantasy and use code fantasy at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/fantasy and use code fantasy for up to 40% off. Let's turn our full attention to foreshadowing important moments for the rest of this book and the rest of the series.
The King of Hybern tells Rhys that it will take everything Rhys has to stop him. Quote, "And when you've given everything and you are dead, Rhysand, when your mate is mourning over your corpse, I am going to take her." He's half right here, really.
With, Rhys dying and his mate mourning over his corpse.
That's it. But he'll be dead too, so he can't take her.
Feyre realizes if peace is achieved and she goes back to Valaris, she will be the thing forever changed. We will indeed go through this emotional journey with her in Frost and Starlight.
Every episode, Lexi will sit down with the Suriel and sip some tea and walk us through a world-building topic to help us better understand this world and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is the Night Court's armies, with specific focus on the Illyrian legions and the Darkbringers. First up, we have the Illyrian fighting legions. We did do a Suriel Teatime on Illyrians in ACOWAR episode 8, so this is building on that with specific focus on these warriors in battle. These legions are made up of, you guessed it, Illyrians. They are a warrior race of fairies who were bred to be violent and warmongering. They have bat-like wings that enable them to fly. So yes, they are one of the very few flying armies in Prythian. Illyrian warriors traditionally begin training at age 8 in war camps. Their training is grueling. They are thrown into the sparring arena and left to fend for themselves. They get lashings for picking fights, which is seen as more encouragement for them to keep doing it versus when they are truly punished. Bones are broken over weeks. To become a true Illyrian warrior, you must perform the blood rite, where they go unarmed into the mountains and survive without magic, supplies, and their wings are bound. To really be able to fight as a unit, with on those lines that Nicole was describing there, it takes decades for that kind of training. So I'm assuming that unit training is after they achieve the blood rite. While these war camps regularly feud with one another, they do unite under one legion during times of war, like right now in our story. Some Illyrian Illyrians have raw power where they need siphons to channel that power with precision. These siphons give Illyrians advantage in battle because they can use their magic to create shields and weapons. So while in battle, Illyrians with siphons like Azrael and Cassian use their power to create shields themselves. These shields of red and blue and others have green encompass the Illyrian and their weapons. They also use these powers to target and attack the enemies. Like I said, they create weapons out of them as well. I don't have exact numbers for how many Illyrian warriors there are, but we do get this Rhys line from ACOWAR. Quote, "We have sizable forces, mostly Illyrian legions, and a few thousand Darkbringers." So we know that there are far more than a few thousand Illyrian warriors, and 1,000 will be wiped out just like that during the final battle, still leaving plenty more. So if I had to guess, just kind of ballpark it, I'd say at the very least we have 5,000 Illyrians. Do you agree with that, Nicole?
I would have honestly thought it would have been more.
I think so too. I think that it's at least 5,000.
At least definitely 5,000. I would gather probably closer to like 20,000, but that's just me.
Really?
Yeah. But also, I have no concept of numbers in war.
I don't think that many would have gone to Adriata, though.
No.
Yeah, so I think I could see only at most being in Adriata at 5,000. Even that seems like a lot.
That does seem like a lot in Adriata specifically.
Yeah. When they head into battle, Illyrians spear from the skies in neat, precise lines. It is an honor to be at the front lines, so much so that it is a punishment to be pulled from that front line. They are clad in black armor and armed with a shield, helmet, Illyrian blade, and an assortment of daggers. They fight by the strength of their sword and their power, and their trust in the male on either side of them. This is what they are trained to do, to be a skilled combat warrior and part of a legion that works together to fight the enemy and be an unbreakable line to push the enemy back and back. Then we have the Darkbringers. They are the Court of Nightmares legion of elite warriors. They are made up of High Fae and led by Kier, the steward of the Hewn City. This legion also has its own commanders, captains, and other higher ranks. Like I mentioned, there are a few thousand Darkbringers, and they are all well-trained, powerful, and have been idle for far too long before the war in our story. I assume the last time they saw action was in the war 500 years ago. The steward of the Hewn City, aka Kier, has the right to deny the Darkbringers aiding the High Lord of the Night Court. This agreement was part of a deal made thousands of years ago, where the Hewn City would remain within their mountain and not challenge or disturb the rest of the Night Court beyond its borders, as long as they had the right to deny aiding in battle. The Darkbringers fought against the Loyalists in the war 500 years ago, though it is notable their behavior was almost as bad as the enemy's. And the enemy was really, really, really bad. To get to the battle locations, the Darkbringers either march or Kier and his commanders winnow them to where they need to be. Based on this information, I assume the most powerful Darkbringers who can winnow are put in leadership positions. Unlike the Illyrian legions, Darkbringers fight on foot because they obviously don't have wings, and they charge into battle swathed in wisps of night and armed with star-bright steel. They carry shadowy shields that flare into place before them. They wield vicious shadows to blind enemy soldiers in swaths of darkness, then rip those shadows away to again blind them with the flaring sunlight, allowing them to swiftly strike the enemy down with blades. Even if they have, behavior problems, when they are on the field, they are a force to be reckoned with. They fight as one, obedient and unfaltering, lashing out with their shadows and steel. Just a fun fact, even the Darkbringers are afraid to go to the dungeons of the Hewn City, at least according to Cassian, because apparently the dungeons are that bad. At this point in our story, the Darkbringers have been rallying and preparing for battle since Rhys and Feyre's recent visit to the Court of Nightmares, but they were not quite ready to jump into this first battle at the Summer Court, so only the Illyrians participated in this battle at Adriata. But don't worry, the Darkbringers make it to the next battle, and even Rhys will admit at the end of this war that Kier's Darkbringers were crucial to their victory. While these two fighting legions do not work together off the battlefield or even like each other, on the battlefield they do unite under the Night Court. The Illyrians attack first, and whoever of the enemy is left, the Darkbringers take care of. This tactic is pulled off precisely and coolly. In addition to these two trained armies, some Valaris citizens will also join the war. Rhys deliberately doesn't ask anyone in the city to join in his armies. I have some questions about that. But anyway, several citizens do feel it is the right thing to do, and they meet up with the Summer Court Legion they find on their way south to the Battle of Adriata. And that's all we know about the Valaris citizens who might be fighting here. At least we know that a few of them die. That's what else we know. That, my friends, is the Suriel Teatime on the Night Court armies.
I learned something today. I did not know that about the Darkbringers. That was cool.
I did not realize that they had so much shadow magic.
Me neither. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us close out the ACOWAR only part of the episode with our Fae-vorite moments.
Tarquin is not impressed by Feyre being High Lady, and he says to Rhys, quote, "You do love to spit on tradition." Tarquin is such an interesting character when it comes to tradition, which we explored in our Summer Court ACOMAF episode. He is both a visionary who wants to break tradition, and he relies on tradition as a young and inexperienced High Lord. So I love how this comes up again with him.
Despite Moore's unyielding language, the spot she said the meeting would take place was universally rejected. The High Lords just being unwilling to make a decision ever is hilarious. And side note, one of my biggest pet peeves is that.
I can totally understand how they can't make a decision.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so where do you think she, like, her unyielding, this is the place, where do you think she offered before they were like, no?
I would have said probably the day court.
Yeah.
Because they do have such close ties to Helion. So I think it was the day court. But his court was a little too far away from the seasonal courts. And I'm willing to bet it's a little too close to the night court.
I was going to say, I think that they were smart enough not to offer the night court full stop. Like, there's no way.
Oh, yeah. It's like they totally knew better. Which, you know, okay, while I know that it would have not been accepted, they could have offered Valaris. And that would have been another nice little stepping stone.
I agree.
I don't think that would have been actually a good idea. Because they don't know what's going to happen at this High Lords meeting and they don't want to risk Valaris again.
Oh, man. Moving on to my next one. After almost a day I'd actually even say probably over a day of not eating, Rhys gives Feyre the choice of letting him pick what he eats first, her or the food spread. And then she says, quote, "I picked wisely." This is both a favorite moment and also another pet peeve of mine because I hate it when an author's like, "I picked wisely." So it's like up to the reader to decide what she picked. I'm like, just tell me what she picked. Which one do you think she did?
Oh, it's like 150% she picked him feasting on her. Like, that's like no question. Oh, I absolutely would have picked the food too. Like, but this is not us. This is Feyre.
Oh, Feyre.
Like, they have not eaten in a while. Like, they have had a battle. They went to the prison. Like, yes, like there's been, and I think that she might have eaten like a little bit like at the camp, but maybe. Like, come on. I would have enjoyed a wonderful meal and then had some other fun.
There you go. That's the order of operations that I'm proud to call you my sister. Nesta waiting for Cassian in the dining room, and Feyre keeps her mouth shut, saying, quote, "If she wouldn't ask, I wasn't going to get in the middle of it." That's a first, Feyre.
Amren says she's going to go read the Book of Breathings until her eyes bleed, and Feyre is not sure if she's joking or not, and it's just a funny little nod to how terrifying and powerful this book is. Last but not least, Cassian is at a loss for words with Feyre's regal, gorgeous look for the High Lords meeting. "You look so official and fancy." Oh, Cassian. It's still better than "your hair is clean." And then Azriel chuckles with his own comeback to Cassian that he doesn't have to resort to spouting poetry. "No, Mr. Batboy, you give jewelry."
Oh, I did not take it as "I give jewelry." I took it as a very different type of statement.
Oh, I do too, but he does give jewelry, and that is how
he re-gifts jewelry too.
Yes, he does.
All right, friends, we are about to begin our Maasverse Madness section for the day.
Today's Maasverse Madness does include spoilers for both Crescent City and Throne of Glass books, so if you have not read all 3 SJM series, this is where we part ways. But before you go, reminder that next episode we will be covering ACOWAR chapters 42 through 48, aka the High Lords meeting. We know this is a big favorite that everyone is so excited for.
One of my favorite chapter stretches, I think, in the ACOTAR series. Like, it is
me
so
too.
good. But before we begin Maasverse Madness, a huge shout out to our new members of the Inner Circle on Patreon: Dawn M, Brandy B, Sommer, Laura O, Cassidy, Jan, Jade,
Kylie, Carla, Sasha, Nicole A, Brittany M, Caitlin K, Dylan, Marissa, Christine S, Lexi S. Oh my gosh, we got a Nicole and Lexi here. That's awesome. Hello. And Catherine S.
And rounding it out, we also have Laura C., Courtney, Harper, Muriel, Elizabeth S., Shelby S., Daenerys Drogo, epic name, Mindy, Becca M., Connie, and Bryn. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining our Inner Circle Patreon tier. We really and truly adore you and appreciate your support. And if you also are like, hey, I want my name read off on an episode and get showered with love too, be sure to join the Patreon party.
We also have new merch. We have a lot of new merch, actually, by the time this episode comes out. It is awesome. There's an apron that is my favorite thing in the entire world, and I'm not going to say any more.
I think you can all guess what it says on it, and you just need to go and run to it.
Link to our merch store is in the show notes.
And if you are not following us on TikTok and Instagram, you know the drill. What are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
And last but not least, rate and review the podcast. It takes 2 seconds. It's one of the best things you can do, not just for this podcast, but for any podcasts you regularly listen to. Let's get into Maasverse Madness.
All right, today we are discussing concepts that give spoilers from Crescent City and Throne of Glass, like we said a little bit ago. So please only continue listening if you've read both other series.
After 2 doozies of Maasverse Madness, I, emphasis on I, have a short and sweet Maasverse Madness for the day. Let's talk about Mor's blades in battle. Quote, Mor wore Illyrian leathers as well, but the blades on her were different, slimmer, lighter, some of their tips slightly curved, like lightning given flesh. Seraphim blades, she told me, gifted to her by Prince Draken himself during the war. Lightning is very interesting given that Hunt, who is an angel in CC, has the power of lightning, and the Seraphim are the angels of the ACOWAR world. I don't think this means anything. It's just like a fun little nod to Hunt, I think.
All right, well, Nicole, step aside, because I have more Maasverse to discuss. Let's get into Feyre's crown. The crown is described as crafted of silver and diamond, all fashioned into swirls of stars and various phases of the moon. It has an arching apex, holding aloft a crescent moon of solid diamond, and it's flanked by 2 exploding stars. But more importantly, she let this crown call to her among the others. She feels drawn to it in a similar way as the ring in the Weaver's cottage that had Rhys's magical imprint on it. And while the crown doesn't look heavy, it does feel heavy. She says it feels like very strange, so it looks lighter than it actually is. When I first read this emphasis on the pull Feyre feels from this crown, remember that is why she chose it, because she really felt drawn to it. I immediately thought of the theory we've been talking about with her being of Starborn lineage. The shortest version of this is that perhaps the Archerons are also descendants of ancient Fae, specifically Thea, who was Starborn. What if this crown was Thea's and then her daughter Selene inherited it, and she is the one, remember, who married the High Lord of the Night Court? The timelines of this family heirloom treasure trove, we'll call it, being 10,000 years old, kind of lines up with Selene, who was born less than 15,000 years ago. And then when Bryce, Nesta, and Azriel are going through the tunnels toward the prison in House of Flame and Shadow, there is a particular line that stood out. Quote, to the right, around the natural archway, an array of stars and planets had been carved, crowned at its apex by a large setting or rising sun. Bryce's star glowed brighter as she faced it, guiding her here. These carvings all through the tunnels were made by Selene. And while this description matches, of course, the Dusk Court, and in fact, I think there might even be a crown that might be on the cover of Silver Flames that also matches this Dusk Court, it is an eerily similar description to this Night Court crown, and Bryce's starlight pulls her in this direction. I don't think that's like a one-to-one matchup at all, but I thought it was so interesting with very similar descriptions there. And then here's the biggie. We get another mention of a crown of stars during Celine's mega download in House of Flame and Shadow, with an Asteri wearing the crown. And who specifically serves this Asteri? Thea. So what if Thea took this crown of stars from the Asteri she served after they overthrew the Asteri, and somehow it originally belonged to the Asteri, and then Thea was able to put her starlight power into it to make it her own, or the Asteri took it from the Starborn in the first place? At first I was, well, maybe this was a Dread Trove crown that the Asteri was wearing, and therefore it couldn't be this Night Court crown. No, the Dread Trove crown is made of golden spikes. It has nothing with stars in it. So that to me was like oh my God. moment about how it actually has a connection to Thea and the Starborn. And then, because it was very specific that Thea served this particular Asteri for centuries. And then we get 2 more mentions of a crown of stars that are associated with Bryce, at least in House of Flame and Shadow, where Hunt swears he can see a shadow of a crown of stars around her head. It's not actually there, but I wonder if it's reminiscent of the real star crown for the Starborn, and the real crown is there in the Night Court super secret treasure room that is 10,000 years old. And because Fae-vorite is also Starborn, that is why she is drawn to it. But guess what? I'm not even done talking about crowns. Oh, putting aside the Starborn connection to this crown, kind of, there are theories about how this all connects, but we're not going to get too crazy here. This is more of just really cool parallels. Let's shift to the Throne of Glass connection, because there are multiple crowns of stars with similar descriptions as Fae-ra's. I don't think it's the same crown by any means. Like, I do think it is the same crown with Thea and the Asteri. The timelines get way too complicated. We still have to talk about these though. And a lot of what I'm pulling here is spurred from the fantastic Reddit post called 2 Books, 1 Crown by ClaimSalt 1697. Yes, we have the link in the show notes. Manon has the crown of stars, which was originally Rhiannon Crocken's, the last queen of the Crocken witches. I know you think here, Nicole, but I will say this crown of stars has a different description than Fae-ra's. Quote, a living, glowing thing that glittered in her hand, as if 9 stars had been plucked from the heavens and set to shine along the simple silver band. There's no mention of moons like the Night Court crown, and Manon describes his crown as being light, whereas Fae-ra's crown feels heavier than it looks. So I do, however, love that parallel there with the witches and their own crown of stars, which brings me to Mab's crown that is Aylin's now by right because she's her descendant. It's described as a crown that is ancient and glowing, crafted of silver and pearl and fashioned into upswept wings that meet in its peaked center. It's encircled with spikes of pure diamond and shimmers like the moon's rays. It's not the exact same as our Night Court crown, but oh my God, that is really, really similar. Like really similar. Yes. It is also far heavier than it looks, as if it has a core of solid iron. So I think that Fae-ra's crown could have a core of iron based on this exact same description of weight. And then when Aylin wears it, she shines bright as a star. Sounds like some Starborn language there to me, although I admit it could also just be really cool, similar magic descriptions. Like, I will say that, but come on. Nicole is just freaking out right now. Oh my God. And then just a quick other thing here that I really didn't get too into because, to be honest, it was 11:30 at night last night and I needed to go to bed. Elena also had a crown of stars. And then the most random connection to ACOWAR of all of this, glowworms.
I did not think
the treasure room. The treasure room Reese shows Farah has glowworms illuminating the crowns, and Aylin is in a cave with glowworms. It's described as a sea of stars. They are literally the same creatures with glowworms like this. They are the same shiny blue, like they're the same kind of thing. So there you go. There's a big connection. Glowworms in both worlds.
Okay, wait,
I'm done. Yes.
If Rhiannon Crocken's crown is similar to Fae-ra's crown, is that further parallelism that they are from a Crocken descendant witch line? Or is this more parallelism for Thea and them being of the Starborn descent? I'm leaning towards Thea.
I am too. Like, I am convinced that it is the same crown. And that is right there showing that Farah is Starborn.
And I think it's
like Bryce.
It's heavy. Oh my God. And then they're like distantly related. That is wild.
And then I was also thinking about it because we had been saying, well, maybe Thea wasn't that ancient Fae warrior because
I think she is.
I agree, because I was thinking about it, and Celine during her big download made sure that her mother's memory was essentially erased. And what does the bone carver say?
What the bone carver says?
Yes, exactly what the bone carver says. So there, the ancient Fae warrior who is now forgotten because her daughter made sure she was forgotten, and she only now has part of her bloodline in humans, which I do think are both in Ember, therefore in Bryce, and in the Archerons. And boom, there is a great parallel right there.
Fucking delicious.
Okay, I'm done.
I love this shit. All right, folks, that is it for the day.
Next Monday, we are, of course, covering chapters 42 through 48, the High Lords meeting. We are so excited, and we have a big week of preparing to do.
Remind me. Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, a.k.a. our sanity manager. We love ya. And last but not least, please share this episode with your fellow ACOWAR friends. If you would go into a palace with someone, but you'd give them a talking to, this person is probably also an ACOWAR reader. You can send this episode to them.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And experiencing the go, go, go rush of adrenaline, like Nicole was saying earlier. Did you say that earlier?
Sort of.
And yet, he was ultimately proven right that the Night Court are night guys. Wait, whoa, that's not right.
They are night owls.
Second, I don't even remember what the first point was.
Got lasagna in my teeth. Hold on.